I'd like to welcome you all to our spring open forum. These evenings are held twice a year in the fall and the spring. There is no agenda from the administration. There is no agenda from the school board. It is strictly to discuss any items that you as residents might have that you'd like to talk about. We do have the board. I have Dr. Tamur on the right, Ms. Kutcher, Jim Brady, Russ Giesinger, Dr. Bender. When you get older and mine goes bad. Dr. Martin, I'm Bob Quinter, Dr. Martin, Dr. Todd, Ms. Guydish, Todd Davies, Mike Chapina, and Ms. Pisha. The members of the board plus the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and business manager. With no further ado, I'll open the floor to any questions from the floor. Step up, state your name and address, and we'll go from there.
My name is Michael Conti. I'm a resident of Calkins Drive. I have 2 kids in the Exeter Township School District right now. I guess I had addressed you about 2 years ago. I think there was a time when you had attritioned a music position within the elementary school. So I came before you to say, with all the money and all the funding cuts that are happening, what we don't want to turn into is other neighboring school districts like the Daniel Boone School District. Daniel Boone has inflicted pain on their educational program by cutting mostly teachers, cutting programs, raising class sizes. This is exactly what Exeter Township doesn't want to be. For the amount of money that I pay in my taxes and the tax hike that you're going to end up giving us again, what we want to pay for is the education of our children. We don't want to pay for a garage mahal. We don't want to pay for some new facility that you're going to build when you could just patch the existing facility. We all care about the bus drivers. They're obviously a very important part of what makes the school district work. I don't think anybody would argue with that. However, whenever you're going to be looking at other capital programs and cutting those instead of building the actual new facility in the back of Owatin Creek instead of using the money for other capital projects that are going to help the children in the school district, are going to help the schools, they're going to help the programs that are continuing to be cut. Don't turn into Daniel Boone School District. I've watched that personally. I've watched Andrew Basil destroy that from his school board position over the last 10 years. Please don't let that happen. All I'm trying to say is, I've seen you already reduce the school program. You attrition that position. I understand that you weren't going to fill it. So I already came before you 2 years ago, and I continue to see this. It's happening in all our neighboring school districts. Look at why I'm missing. Why are they so good? Why do they continue to be so good? Because they're funding the educational programs. They're not building facilities for buses. They're not building some fund that's going to fund a new stadium like they did in Daniel Boone School District. We want the money to go directly to the school programs. We want to increase school programs. That's why we're paying all the tax dollars that we are. Thank you.
Very good. First, we're going to address the teachers and the programs.
Good evening. As superintendent, my key goal is to continue the programs and continue to improve the programs and staff them well. We have never furloughed a teacher or a support person, at least as long as I've been in the Exeter School District, which has been 12 years. And each time we get a retirement or a resignation, it's only wise and prudent to look to see whether or not that position needs to be replaced. And in some cases it has not. The reason for the attrition of that teacher and other teachers that have been attrition is because we have experienced a decrease in enrollment at the elementary level, particularly in the last several years. That is the reason for it, and that is the only reason for it. But we would not be good stewards of our tax dollars if we just automatically filled positions where it became apparent to us that we could run our core program without filling that position because there are less classes. We are down, what, about 25 teachers, I think, Mrs. Guidish, overall, maybe a couple more by now, I'm not sure, and some support staff as well. And yet, if you look at our class sizes are still very, very reasonable, in some cases small. So we are not increasing class sizes, we are not compromising the education of our students, nor would I ever recommend to allow that to happen as long as I'm here. And I know our board would not either. And attritioning teachers when your enrollment is declining is just the wise thing to do. Thank you.
Next.
Okay. Good afternoon. Okay, my name is Tammy Gray, and I lived in Exeter for over 20 years, and I am also a bus driver for the Exeter. I would like to take this time to educate the public and set the record straight on the need for a new bus facility. I've been to many meetings, and it always comes up, and of course, our main concern is the welfare of our children's education. Let me just mention, if it wasn't for the transportation of our buses, many of the children would not get to school to get their much needed education, making transportation one of our top concerns. We as bus drivers have great pride in our jobs and always maintaining safety in transporting our children for their great education here at Exeter. The school district has been talking and working on a new bus facility for over 20 years and always putting it on a back burner because of other needed projects. Reichten School and the renovations at the high school was a combined $50 million project, and the Owatin School was around $33 million. So why do we have a need for these costly projects? Because we were overpopulating our schools, which I think we could all agree with. So my question is this: if we are overpopulating our schools, then of course more buses are needed to accommodate. In return means more area to put the buses. I don't recall this much hype from the public when we were spending millions on these other projects. The bus facility is much, much less inexpensive with the money available for the project. Getting to the bus facility itself, with again people asking the same questions over and over. Why not repair the roof, put new tanks in, and fix the plumbing, and call it a day with less costs? The roof is a no-brainer. Of course, much cheaper to repair a roof. The new tanks and plumbings are a different story. We are grandfathered in at our current location, and any changes made must be put up to current codes, meaning less of space because of the current tanks being underground, new codes needing them above. We utilize every inch of that property, giving us no room to give. Moving buses or vans to other properties are not an option due to maintenance issues that can occur first thing in the morning, meaning maintenance needs to either fix it or requiring us to quickly jump into another bus, which could not happen if we were scattered all over the place. Efficiently, we need to stay as a whole, not scattered. They have putting Band-Aids on this facility for over 20 years. Now guess what? They aren't sticking anymore. We bus drivers don't care where they put a new facility. They could put it in the middle of your development, which I'm sure you wouldn't be very happy about. We just know it has to be done yesterday. We also know that purchasing more land could cost us more, so why not use the district's already owned property? This facility has been on the back burner long enough, and this is the closest we have ever gotten, and we will fight for what is needed, not wanted. It's not all about the toilets or the pulling out on the Shelbourne Road with the blind curve, which for the record, the speed limit is 40. Out here on 562, it is 45. Big difference there. It's not all about the parking spaces for the drivers, or it's not all about the parking for the buses. It's not about a wash bay needed for the buses to look pretty, or more bays for the mechanics to do their job, or giving my boss a more private office he is entitled to. It's about them as a whole. My boss has proved his efficiency in keeping us owned by the district and saving money in the long run. With the money he was able to save, could have bought 3 new facilities by now. The new facility will be saving taxpayers money in the long run just by having 3 bays and a wash bay. For example, if you have 3 bays, it could save thousands just because the mechanics will have the room to pull a transmission out rather than sending it out because they have a place to put the bus to sit. So it's a lot more money saved on that aspect. The wash bay could save thousands as well. We all know that brine and cinders they put on the road can rust things out. We need to protect our investments and stay efficient. The personal hits and twisting of our words need to stop. The creating of a hate group against the new facility and keeping yourself anonymous tells me that there is a more personal agenda. Own your words and opinions. Exeter is a great place to live and raise a family, with the area growing all the time, which means so does our bus fleet. Let's stop all this craziness and come together as a community and realize what is needed, not wanted.
Excuse me, Bob, I'd like to follow up on that. I do own my words and my own opinions as a school board member. I'd just like to address a couple of things. First of all, regarding the property itself, there is the potential, and always the potential, to obtain either exceptions or waivers for work that has to be done out on the Kerr Road property. So to just assume that there would be millions of dollars of things we'd have to do to construction on that property is not necessarily true. The school board passed passed a motion asking for an exception on the Owatton Creek property. Basically, they could have done the same thing for the Kerr Road property. Granted, it may not have been easy because you're asking for a lot of exceptions. There are stormwater issues, there are other ordinances, but we never asked for those exceptions. As far as the property itself, when Owatton was selected as a property to develop on, that was set up primarily to be the future of other elementary schools. So now what we've done is we've taken a prime piece of real estate, a prime piece of developable property, and we're going to turn that into a location for 80 buses and 80 cars. My concern is while we won't see the expense today, we will see the expense in the future when we have to acquire that property. Not necessarily for our generation, but for another generation. I would like to single out the service, the transportation center and Mr. Wegman. They do an excellent job. By all accounts, in that 2012 report, as I said at the prior school board meeting, those guys knocked it out of the park. They do a tremendous job. My concern with that report was that nowhere in that report, one single time, was the building raised as an issue to their efficiency or as an obstacle to their efficiency. Now granted, I am told that they were not looking for that in the report. However, if that would have reared its ugly head, somebody would have been obligated to raise that as an issue. It was never raised as an issue.
I need to correct at least one thing, Mr. Chibina's statement. Yes, there is room aboard the Owatton campus for another school, a junior high school, and an administrative building. The addition of the transportation facility has nothing to do with either of those two sites. The land that it is going on was an extra field that was not even fully developed as an athletic field. There's nothing has been taken off the master plan because of this facility. So far as asking for the exceptions for the existing site, some of those would require a federal exemption, or a federal exemption with the water in particular. And the number and depth of them, and we would still end up with a facility where we couldn't put all of our buses. So the problem, if we could fit the buses on that site, we'd still be there. We'd be fixing up the building and we'd be making the repairs. But the fact is, once we do a renovation, we have to go by code, And that includes some federal codes, and I don't know if Mr. Pena ever tried to get a water waiver from the EPA. It just doesn't happen. So, next, please. Mr. Yager.
Andrew Yager, 17 Foxglove Lane, and I would like to address, Mr. Quinter, what you just said, and you were not completely in the right on what you said there, because every piece of building lot coverage of that site due to its zoning counts against how much percentage you can have that is actually covered. That's right. Therefore, with you putting another bus facility there, you no longer have the ability to put that school and that administration building, and don't say that it doesn't, because it really, trust me. And it's just, you look at it, you say the EPA is not going to let you have anything for the Kerr Road facility. Well, you know what? Have you checked with them on putting tanks and stuff right there where you have wetlands on the current Owatton Creek property? I bet you haven't, because you haven't checked on a lot of stuff. When we did that 2012 survey, I asked specifically, did we take into account how much it would cost for bus garage? You assured me we did. Guess what? Thank you very much for making sure that it really didn't happen, Mr. Jupina. And I would appreciate it if you would stick to the facts. Thank you.
Mr. York. We've got our architect here. Have we materially affected the ability to put those other sites on with current plans?
At this point, I believe I have some.
Can't hear you.
Be patient.
Would you identify yourself, Justin?
Justin Iskins, AEM Architects, also 7 Bows Lane. As far as the Owatton Creek site goes, the building that we have proposed at this point and the associated site work, the building we've proposed for the Owatton Creek site as well as the associated site work has a coverage of approximately 3.2 acres on the site. The site at, excuse me one second, the site has a maximum, or excuse me, a minimum open area requirement of 80% of the lot area. And the Owatton Creek site is 89.16 acres, which is 3.88 million square feet. Basically, between the area that's covered by the proposed project, as well as the site, excuse me, the area that's covered by the Owatton Creek, if both projects are there, there's less than essentially 10 acres of coverage. Don't have the exact numbers on the Owatton Creek area. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 acres that site covers from building and paved area, including roads, play areas. So between the two projects, less than half of the allowable buildable area and coverage area is basically being used on that site. So you still have the ability to, after this project, if it goes forward, to cover that site by about another 10 acres between building and paving.
Thank you, sir.
So the question is, before the bus barn is built, how much developable property is there? And after the bus barn is built, how much developable property is there?
I don't have the exact numbers on what Owatton covers. It's in a neighborhood of 5 acres, give or take, with play areas, what have you.
I'm just looking for a before and after.
So right now you have about 15 acres,
Okay, so
give or
we'll be
take.
down to-
We'll be adding 3.4 acres of coverage,
So developable space will go from 15 acres to about 12 and a half.
give or take.
So we are losing acreage for development.
You are losing acreage, but there's still, using a Watton as a guide, you could effectively replicate that coverage area twice.
But then you'd also be affecting the size of future facilities as well, because you have less acreage to build on.
You have the opportunity to put 2 Watton-sized facilities on that site beyond this.
We could build 2 more schools the size of the existing school that's there, even with the thing. Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Thank you, Justin. So we've determined we do have the ability to put 2 more buildings the size of the existing building. Don't shake your head, Andy. You don't know what you're talking about, as usual. All right? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good evening, school board. I also want to thank the transportation people. I mean, you guys do a great job. It's never been about punishing you. You know, I've been to your facility. It's no gem. What we're about here is finances. Can we afford this? The school board's budget is forecasting a deficit. Even with a 4.5% tax increase, there's a deficit. And I don't think it's really prudent to spend another $4 million. I don't know, the cost could go higher. I have a question for you, Mr. Quinter. You indicated that no projects have been deferred with the move to build this bus center. But shortly after the voting meeting to move forward on the bus project, the capital project list was changed. Some projects were moved back, others were downgraded from replacement to repair. Others were pushed back years. Those decisions shortly followed the vote to move forward on the garage. Can you explain how moving those projects back or changing the work that was to be done is not deferring them when the only thing that changed was that there was less money available for them because of the bus garage?
Okay, first, there wasn't less money available for them. All right? Second, every year, that list is reviewed. And projects are moved forward and back. You'll notice one is putting carpeting in the Jackson Wald lobby. My first question, to the manager is the carpet a safety hazard? And he says no. I said, is it torn or unsightly? He says no. Well, why are we replacing it? Because it's easier to maintain tile. We're not going to replace the carpet, all right? That'll move. The same thing happens with the roofs. Mr. Phipps goes and he estimates the expected lifespan of a roof. 20 years, pick a number out. So he puts on that list, at 20 years, the roof right that is 20 years old. We may have to repair or replace it. We get toward the budget time, he goes up on the roof, he walks around with a roofing expert. What do we have to do to this? Do we have to replace it? No. Are there any repairs required? Yeah, over there. Do I have to hire a roofing contractor to do it, or can I do it with my internal assets? Well, it's just a matter of putting some, whatever on it. So now that roof has gone from a repair or replace to one of our maintenance personnel going up and putting some stuff on it. It changes every year. That is a list of anticipated projects. And none of them were deferred because of this project.
If I'm not, unless I don't recall correctly, but I thought the list was like 6 years, but now it has been extended by numerous years, the capital project list.
Ken or Mr. Brady?
Hopefully he'll talk. if you look at the list, because this is not one, and I will project. If we look at the list over the years, and I'm only raising my voice so I can hear, thank you very much, what we would find is the list is always moving. And why I say that is, example one. For years, the junior high lockers were slated to get repaired. And this year they got moved, and this year they got moved. Finally, about 3 or 4 years ago, we finally replaced the lockers. On the list has been the replacement of the Lorraine parking lot for years and years and years. It got moved. This year, we're doing the Lorraine parking lot. On the list for years and still on the list are all the seats in the junior high auditorium, which every year we say, we're not doing them this year. So it is a very, it's a living document, and one of the jobs of Mr. Pitts is to prioritize what has life, what doesn't have life, what we should spend our money on, where we can allocate the funds more usefully. So it's not a saying we're doing this project and therefore we're stealing over there. It's constantly reevaluating, just like the roof situation, or going and saying, you know, if I coat that driveway, can it get some more life? Or we know it's a dead driveway, but can we just pull it together for one more year and deal with a couple more pieces of gravel getting hit into our tires? So it's really just a process. The deficit in the budget, now on the board for 6 years, I have never seen a budget that wasn't in a deficit when we start talking about it. It's just the way it is. Not because we want it to be, but because of factors. And I've said them so many times, everybody else says them, it gets belabored. You start with your first thing, you say your charter schools. When I got on the board, we spent $300,000 a year for cyber charter schools. This year we spent $1.5 million, got nothing from the state. Second thing I bring up usually, because everybody else does, is Peasers. When we used to have a match on Peasers, it was 7% for the state and local. We put 3.5, they put 3.5. This year we're going to be at 25, eventually we're getting up to 32. If we're 25, we're now 9.5% higher than we used to be. And last year it wasn't as high. That's going to bring us up. Do we like taxes? I hate taxes. You hate taxes. We all hate taxes. Do I think the current plan the current governor has works? No, I think it's ultimate failure. Because I think anytime you raise your sales tax on anyone, it's the most harsh penalty you can put on any working being who goes out and buys a good. I think when I go and visit my son up in Connecticut and I pay taxes, horrible. When I go down to South Carolina where I like going to visit and spend 12 to 14% on my dinner or 8 to 10% on my taxes at times, I'm not a happy camper. Same time, I think most benefits we try to look at, you try to see where you can make the dollars work. And with this project, I know it can be said that a lot of people don't like it. I would also turn around and say it's not a $3.6 million impact this year. If we do this project, it's roughly about $150,000 impact that we're looking at. And another thing we look at when we bring up a school district, such as YMSC, which is a great school district. They always get great ratings. You know, frankly, I wonder sometimes why Exeter doesn't get looked at. But I would say that in their school district, a lot of students can walk to school. Exeter does not have the advantage of having a lot of pedestrian-friendly areas for our students to go to. We can have children walking to our high school very easily. We can have the local students that live adjacent to Righton walk to school. The majority of people that are coming to our schools, if a child's going to Lorraine or going to Jacksonville or going to Wadden, they're not going to be going there on their feet. They're going to go there by bus because they cannot safely traverse the way to get to school, unfortunately. So a person I worked with said to me last week, he said, you know, we're not in the bus business. I said, no, we're in the children business. But in order to be in the children education business, we have to make sure that our children can get there. And when we're looking at this, the woman who spoke earlier had a good point. You know, we do have to be able to maintain our buses. Do I necessarily think we should be buying a bus wash facility? I'm still on the fence about that. Do I think that we need to increase the amount of maintenance bays that we have? Yes, I do, because I think when we purchased this facility 40-some years ago, it had one workable bay to be able to work on things. We also had a fleet that was roughly 50% of where we are. And at that point, it's probably pushed. I don't know. I wasn't around. I've only been living here for 23 years. But now, when you look at it, if you have over 50 buses on the road, and you have about 8 to 10 vans on the road, you have to be able to maintain that fleet as efficiently as possible. Can we park buses other places? Some people would. You know, if I drive through Oleg, I can see buses parked in people's parking lots, in their driveways and their garages. Guess it's their system. Our system, to make it the most efficient operation, works out of a one location destination. So, thank you.
I kind of lost my train of thought with those long answers, but what happened between 2012 when that facility was not an issue, not even mentioned on there?
It was actually an issue back in 2012. That building wasn't an issue.
Let me just finish.
It's just been growing.
Okay, but what is dramatically changed? I know for a fact that student population has gone down 10%. The bus population hasn't gone down 10%. So I guess I'm just not seeing how we can spend more, how you can go for it when we are in financial distress by your own budget. And you know, I don't want to be critical because I truly respect the work you do and the time you put in, but I think there's a lot of members of the community that are skeptical of some of the decisions making. For example, the attempted purchase of the Exeter Ridge Corporate Center for $5.7 million above the market price, and I believe it's still empty. The failed merger attempt with Antietam that nobody wanted. And this transportation center, yes, the Kerr Road facility is no gem, but can we really afford it? I don't think we can.
Well, the first thing, can I put out one thing? First thing, with regards to the building that was not purchased, I can honestly say that at that point, Mr. Staub and I were on the board, Mr. Chapina, Dr. Tamora were not on the board, but we were two of the voices that immediately evaluated and said at that point, we didn't think it was a very good idea for us to go into that venture. Just from a number of points for myself, I just looked at it as it just didn't seem like the right thing to do, and the right price point. There were a lot of lies that went on. With regards to 2012, I would say that the bus garage has been something that's been ongoing. There have been plans around for a decade. There was a third point there. I can't remember right now. Sorry, but I mean,
the bus barn has been on the agenda since 1985, when Mr. Wegman, a former member of this board, proposed building another bus barn at a different site for $500,000. It was delayed then because they didn't want to spend the $500,000. In the last 10 years, we've looked at the high engineering site in Baumstown twice as a possible bus garage, once with us owning it, once with Mascara owning it. We've looked at the East Neversink Industrial Park. We've looked on Lorraine Road at the industrial park. We've looked on Lincoln Road across from the chicken plant. We've looked at the foot of Elm Street when we were talking about building when the township was discussing the crosstown extension. We looked at the Reichton campus. We looked at West Neversink and the Silt Basin. Talked to the state about getting some of that property. We looked at West Neversink Road for at the current Mascara facility. We looked at on Prospect Street behind the post office when the furniture store shut down. We've considered Loush School and Lorraine School. We've looked at a lease purchase of a building. We've looked at a design build. Every time we look at a place, we also consider how we are reimbursed for the cost of renting a bus. The state pays us for renting a bus by the mile where you have a child on it. They do not pay you for deadheading. One reason we didn't stay in we didn't go to the Baumstown site is it would have cost us, this was the across from the chicken plant, would have cost us $100,000 additional operational money every year just to run the buses empty when we could move. So that didn't make sense to do that, and we didn't do it. That's just in the last 10 years what we considered. When you have a facility was in use in the 50s, when I was in school, and took care of 10 buses, and it's the same site, now when we have 50 buses, something has to give.
think I ever got an answer, a yes or no, to my original question was, since the capital project budget was proposed on 1/7 and then prior towards on 3/17, how you can say moving projects, delaying them is not deferring?
What we just tried to explain to you, sir, was that every one of those projects is reviewed every budget year.
Yes.
And it moves around. The list does not stay static, and it moves according to the need. We are not going to spend money on any project that doesn't have to be done.
So would that be
It's gone over every year.
deferring? If you change the date of a
That would be,
project?
then it's not necessary. How's that? Well, there's more than one way of
I'm
looking at
going
it.
by your words. You said that you did not defer anything.
We deferred no necessary maintenance. How's that? Ma'am.
I'm Winnie Hoskins Abraham. I've lived here 38 years after my kids went. I'm Winnie Hoskins Abraham. I've been here 38 years. My kids went through the Exeter schools. I've been watching this unfold and trying to understand. You've been sort of looking back and both of them talking about projecting forward. What your long-term vision is, given that we have climate change, given that the kids on these buses are going to experience climate disruption, and we have maybe 15 years to get off fossil fuels, to not have, environmental collapse in various places. What is the plan to, you say you're going to take 20 years to pay for this. Do you have a solar-facing roof to charge batteries for electric buses? Are we going to have fuel cell buses in the next 10 years? How are we going to get off the petroleum dope that we're using to get our kids to the schools? And what's your long-term vision for how this is
Well, one does have cells.
Since my kids left school, you've opened 2 schools that require busing and closed a neighborhood school where kids could walk to school, Lausch, and used it for desks and storage for administrators. Which, I've seen
We store our administrators
Right, I
there.
know.
We bring them out when the sun shines.
I know. So anyway, I'm just trying to grasp what the long-term, long-range plan is for fossil fuel consumption in your collective vision. By the time this bus ride is paid for, is it going to have solar-charged electric buses running out of it? What's going to happen?
We have no plans for that right now. We have considered alternative fuels for our buses. Unfortunately, the technology is not to the point where we can do that with no severe financial impact. What it will be 20 years from now, I wish I knew, because I buy stock right now. But unfortunately, our nation does not have the answer for that, and we don't have the answer for that either. This is a basic pre-engineered building. We can make it anything we want to as the years go by. We anticipate it lasting a minimum of 30 years. You look at the Jackson Wald School, and it's been online since 1932. It's not like we throw schools away. And the reason we use Lausch is because we outgrew the building that was built in 1926. Yeah.
But how do you anticipate? Is the roof oriented towards the sun? Are there?
We have solar panels that are what?
Yes, I know, but if you build a green school and then you take fossil fuels to get kids there.
We didn't want to build it there.
I know.
We were told to build it there.
I know, I understand that. But-
So I wanted a neighborhood school that the 110 kids from Farming Ridge could walk to,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the way it worked out.
Right.
So we now have a school that no one can walk to. What we will do in the future, I cannot predict, because we have no technology today to answer the problem that you're bringing forth, ma'am.
Florida is using fuel cell buses and they drive over something and get charged.
We had one, the BCIU bought one. And it was to be the test bed and the demonstration of how well this worked. It sat on the lot out at the IU because we could never get it to run. Finally, they took it back and they said, we'll get back to you when we fix it. But it sat out on the Common Street lot because it would not run. So, and it was about 3 times the price of a normal bus. So we have 50 buses. Do we want to invest 3 times the amount of money in unproven technology yet?
No, but do we want to design something that will adapt as fast as we can?
This will adapt to anything we want it, ma'am. This will adapt to anything we want it to be. It's just a pre-engineered steel building.
With a south-facing roof?
The orientation of the roof would be south, yes ma'am.
That's good.
All right?
I think if we're looking at powering vehicles in the future, you're going to need more than one roof. If anything, the first thing we would look at is CNG buses, similar to what you find at a facility like an airport. But when you look at,
If anything you would look at first, you'd look at CNG buses, because the United States sits on basically the Saudi Arabia natural gas. Now, the main thing you have to look at it though is you have to change over all your bus facilities into that. You have to look at the positives and negatives. In order to build that facility, then you have to look at what the costs are, maintenance-wise, all the machinery, and then all your parts. You then have to have your filling station. Can we do that? Yes, we can do it. However, there's a cost to transition your fleet. You would have to somehow coordinate that and look at what kind of incentives we get from the state to do that.
Right.
Before you can do
There will
that.
be some.
The CNG will be there. CNG is not a problem.
One choice, yeah.
That's probably your most viable choice right now if you're going to look at it.
What's your long, you say it's going to take you 20, 30 years to pay for this, and
Well, I think
it's going to be obsolete presumably during
Well,
that time.
the bus facility,
In the future.
a bus facility as far as someplace you have to dock your vehicles has to be someplace. So this will be still a viable choice. The question will be what power source goes in there to move your vehicles out of there. And that's beyond where we can think right now. I mean, if you were looking at the national news in the last week, the president's saying our electric grid needs to be upgraded. He hasn't also at the same time turned around and said how many billions or trillions of dollars he's going to throw into that. So if you always have to be flexible. I think that you work with what you have right now. Right now we're trying to work with the most efficient fleet we can. And if we can find a way to do it another way, we will.
And the concentration of schools that require busing.
Well, may I propose an idea that happened a couple years ago? A couple years ago, there was an engineer and I who worked together. I'm also an engineer. And we came up with a plan for a sidewalk extension of Lorraine Elementary School. Because at that point, there was a missing link. The main benefit we looked at was the community now could get in and out of Lorraine on weekends, maybe even just to use the playground facility. We did engineering studies. We did all the groundwork. We got all the money to do the construction, and the project didn't occur because we couldn't get sign off from the township to build the sidewalk extension. Though we planned out all the blinking lights. One of the excuses or reasons I got was the fact that it's not a safe road. If it's not a safe road, I would question then why we are not enforcing it. So if we want to encourage pedestrian activity, we also have to have a safe environment for our pedestrians, which are our children. So I'm not going to go any further.
Well, I'm glad you've all thought about it and you have a 20, 30-year plan to get us off fossil fuels. Thank you.
I didn't say that. Because we got to adjust.
Good evening. My name is Keith Golombeski. I live at 4540 Green Tree Road. And I have a question for you. Whose responsibility is it to get these children to school? Is it the school board, the school district? I'm a single person. I don't have a kid in the school district. And I'm helping to pay for all these rides and all these buses that have to be bought, the new garage that wants to be built. When I moved into my home, I was paying $2,100 school taxes. I'm now paying $5,000. And I'm retired. I live on a fixed income, so that's hard to get together every year. And it's with this project that you're proposing here, no one has even come up here and said, who's paying for this? Guess what? I already know. So, what I'm saying to you is, did you ever consider that the people that are using the buses and sending their children to school are the ones that should be paying, not me? We shouldn't be responsible for that. The parents should be responsible to get their kids to school. If the school district's responsible, then I can understand it. If they're not, then somebody ought to look at what's going on here. Because as taxpayers, we're paying enough.
Yes, the school district is responsible in many cases. If we have a transportation program, and we have to have a transportation program in order to get many of our children to school, many of who have parents who leave for work early, can't take their children to school for various reasons, don't have a vehicle to take their children to school. The children would not be able to get here if we didn't have transportation. And the law dictates that if we transport students, we have to transport all of our students, at least those who can't walk. And our roads are not walkable as dictated by the law. Most of our roads are considered hazardous roads, or the route between the school and the homes are not walkable for students. And so, according to law, we must transport in those cases.
Well, probably it's a long time since I went to school, but I walked every day.
I know, yeah.
And you know, that's been a long time ago. Things have changed.
Things have changed, yeah.
I realize I'm living in a different area. And there, like you said, there isn't places for them to walk.
Right.
I understand that. However, in my area where I live, there's 2 students that are left off right at the door.
Mm-hmm.
That's door-to-door service. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And every time I'm on my computer, I look out the window and see this little girl coming home. I say, I hope you enjoyed your ride today. I helped pay for that.
Yeah.
And I don't have any children. That's what burns me up.
And there are cases that we must do that.
My name is Tom Schlegel, and I live in Farming Ridge. I've been there for maybe 35 years. When it comes to this busing, I have witnessed in the morning parents driving their children to the bus stop to wait for the bus. Why can't they just drive to Jacksonville School or to a Watt School? In front of my home, there may be 4 cars, and they sit in the cars waiting for the bus to come. I think this is ridiculous, and I agree with the previous gentleman. I think the people who use the buses, the parents, should have to pay, so they pay $100, $200 a year for the bus service. I mean, even if we use BARDA, I have to pay for that. I mean, there's other alternatives here. Now, another alternative, I don't know if any of you ever thought of it, but would be to privatize your bus service. Sell it.
That's right.
Sell the whole kit and caboodle. I'm sure there's a company out there that would be more than willing to transport the kids, maintain the buses, and this would not have to be a school board issue. I think it's something to consider. I mean, the private sector would do a far better job, I'm sure, at less cost. You wouldn't have to be building a bus terminal. They would have their own maintenance facilities. Call Carl Bieber, see if he'd be willing to transport the kids. I mean, really, this is something that should be considered.
Mr. Schlegel, it has been considered, and we in fact solicited bids from the normal providers of school transportation. Well, we just went out with an open bid, so Beaver could have built a bid on it if he desired to. We got 3 bids back. 2 of them were out of the ballpark, spending significantly more money than we do now. Just let me finish, please. The other one from BCIU, who is the major provider of bus transportation in Berks County, which I happen to serve on their board too. And the reason the BCIU does bus transportation is they make money in it. Now, if I'm paying drivers and I'm paying for the buses and I'm paying for the maintenance, if they're gonna make money at it, they gotta do more than me, and they do spend more than me. But we got the BCIU bid. We were gonna save $400,000 over a 3-year contract. We looked at that, and lo and behold, the IU Company A, and I can't remember the name of it, had offered us, let's pick a number, $1 million for our fleet. Company B had offered us $1.1 million for our fleet. The BCIU, where we were going to save $400,000 over 4 years, only gave us $500,000 for our fleet. So we were actually funding the savings by selling our equipment at a cut rate. And that was only, what, 2-3 years ago? Yeah. So we have investigated that, sir, and our transportation operation is regarded in the top 25% of all transportation, school transportation operations in the state. So we're better than most of them.
Well, I'm sure you're doing a fine job, but I'm just thinking of other, I'm not, other alternatives. Because every time we turn around, there's a $3 million building, and you mentioned, I didn't know anything about your deficit, but, I'd love to have a 4-car garage, but I can't afford it.
Well, there is no deficit, all right? Because we don't have a budget yet. And you can't have a budget without a deficit without a budget. Every year, we get a proposed budget that has whatever the administration feels is appropriate on it. And then these 8 people and myself go through those numbers. And we say, no, Ken, I'm sorry, tile's easier, but you're not going to replace the floor. And no, we're not going to do that. Yeah. We cut that deficit out. There is no deficit until there's a budget.
Now, we talked about walking to school. I used to walk from Mount Penn to Pennside to school. I mean, that was back in the day. But could we possibly make this a walking school walkable?
No,
By putting a, I see it.
We could build a tunnel or a bridge.
Or a bridge.
If we could find a way to get the kids to the tunnel or the bridge, because they can't walk along Bordertown Pike.
I think we could find a way. If there's no way.
I couldn't get a sidewalk. I couldn't get a sidewalk in Lorraine in a residential neighborhood.
But I mean, I think these are, I read an article, I don't know what school district proposed this, I think it was a local school district, that they are proposing cutting back on the number of school buses that they have, and they are proposing that children walk to school under supervision. Now, I would think children in Farming Ridge could walk to, what is it, the Jacksonville School, but you'd have to make provisions for them to walk. Now, they're being taken there under supervision, so they're cutting back on the number of school buses. I heard earlier that your elementary population is dwindling. So in essence, if your elementary school population is dwindling, that means as you go up the ladder, your schools will dwindle in the number of students until such time as you get more elementary students. So I think we could be talking about possibly cutting back on the number of buses that you use if you think of alternative ways to get the children to schools and make some of these schools that we have more walkable, and it's just other ideas other than building this $4 million structure, because like the previous gentleman, I'm on a fixed income now. And I look at this school tax bill, I have nobody in the school district. I sent my children to private schools, and yet I'm strapped paying for my neighbor's kids' education. I'm no more responsible for my neighbor's education than I am responsible for seeing that they go to church on a Sunday morning. And so it's up to the parents. Parents who use these buses can pay for them. And that's about it. But I think there's other ways.
Thank you, Mr. Schlegel. I would like to address on who is responsible for getting children educated. In 1842, the Pennsylvania legislature said that we were going to have public education. Along with that goes certain rules, and they've gotten more ridiculous as time goes on. I used to walk to school. I used to cross 422. I never got killed. You know, although some people probably wish I did. But the fact is, I could walk then. Now we cannot have them walk because 422 is designated by. Will you let me listen?
No, you let me talk. Does your principal know this? Because on several occasions, my children withheld in your high school, missed the bus and had to walk from the high school. But it's an Exeter school district, correct?
But
What is it an Exeter school district? This is a school board meeting, correct?
Say what
So
you want to say
Exeter,
already.
so I'm telling you, you said it was state law, children could not walk, correct? That's what you said?
Within certain,
Okay, so I live in Laurel Springs. The high school's here, so my children had to walk from the high school, cross 422, down Painted Sky to where we live.
Well, I thought I heard you say that it was because your child missed the bus.
No, because Mr. McFarland withheld them from school, okay? And said, yes, you're walking. Well, if it is a state law, do your principals know? I'm a parent, I have 2 kids. $4 million for a bus terminal? Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I went to school where my parents went to school, okay? My parents are probably your ages, 60, 70 years old. We patch things. That's what we do. So instead of spending $4 million on a bus terminal, why don't we put that money back into the schools? Instead of making our children, okay, my children he was kicked out and now he has to go to boom. Why? Because he's disciplinary. Why is he disciplinary? Because there's not enough funding in our schools at all for anything in this school district. At all.
I don't see the connection between your child being a disciplinary problem and the budget.
I'm going to show you why it's a disciplinary problem. November 13th, I was diagnosed with stage 2 cervical cancer. My son started to act out in school. Instead of the school coming to my child and saying, you know, what's going on? We've seen stuff has changed. You know what they did? He now has to go to River Rock. We should put them funds back into the school. Get educated counselors to counsel our children, not this SAP program, where you have 16-year-olds trying to mentor 16-year-olds. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Instead, what we're going to do, we're just going to remove you and send you to a different school district. You yourself said enrollment in the school district is down. So why do we need a $4 million bus depot? I have no problems taking my children to school. I have no problems with my children walking to and from school. Other people can do it. The money needs to go to our children, to our teachers, to more staff, okay? That's what we need.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but my name's Todd Crown, 4121 St. Lawrence Avenue. And recently I've been, trying to place me in a different school. Now I've been trying to call the high school and schedule a meeting, just, talk about it, and just express the way I feel about it. But from what I heard, they told all teachers not to contact me about the situation and whatnot, which is fine, but I just want to come here and express myself to you guys if that's okay. Now, recently, my uncle passed away. I'm not trying to put that as a pity act, that's happens, but I was texting my girlfriend because she got close with my uncle saying, it's going to be all right, things like that. Now, apparently there's a new rule in the high school stating that no phones are prohibited because of some pictures that were sent around. Don't want to get too into it because, a little inappropriate. But I didn't know. I was at my uncle's funeral 2 days before. Now, I was told one more discipline referral, and I was out the door, okay? Now, the teacher told me, put your phone away and go down to the emotional support room. I did exactly what she was told. Went to the emotional support room, it was a Friday. Went home, that Saturday I got a call and they said I had to go to a different school. Now, I was waiting for the call, for an opening to come, and they came up with a school called New Story. Now, I personally don't like the school. That's just me. I'm very proud of my hometown in Exeter and where I go. But I just think I deserve a chance to be with my senior class. I'm a senior, by the way. Be with them, finish out my last 20 some odd days, go to the pep rallies, walk with them, you know, and do such things as seniors should do. Now, I don't understand because I just keep calling and calling and calling, getting no calls back. You know, I understand they're busy, but I mean, it's been like a week and a half, 2 weeks since I called. So I just wanted to come, talk to you guys, express how I felt about the situation, just to make me feel a little better because I had a lot of stuff going on lately. That's pretty much it. I just want to know why I can't be there with my senior class. Todd Kremlick.
How do you spell it, son?
T-O-D-D, and then last name's K-R-A-M-L-I-C-H.
Are you working with Mr. McFarland?
Yeah, we were working on, I have an IEP, you know, I have emotional support and stuff, and the whole thing was, you know, pretty much if you're feeling upset, like you're gonna freak out and stuff, because I have an anger management problem, you know, I'm gonna tell you guys that flat out, I get a little upset every now and then. But I was told, you know, if an issue comes about, go directly to the emotional support room and talk to them. And that's what I did. Never got a disciplinary referral, never got any of that. I just get a call saying, you know, we're transferring you to...
Okay, Todd, what I would like you to do, tomorrow morning, call 61, come on up here and I'll give you the phone number. And talk to Mrs. Dr. Martin about who she should contact and how you get in touch with her. All right?
Thank you guys, really appreciate it.
Yeah, give me that number too, Todd, because I need it. Because obviously they don't know what's going on in the schools.
I'm Todd.
Just one second, I'm going to clear this up.
Well, I just need to add like one thing to what he said.
okay.
He forgot to say one thing. Me and him's been coming to this school since pre-kindergarten, okay? And all the way up through senior year, okay, maybe we get discipline for referrals here and there. It's never physical altercations, fights, or anything like that. It's just simple stuff like misuse of planner, they like to say, with me. I might get a drink and use the bathroom, but I only said I'm using the bathroom, or something like that. Then they'll write me up, and then it just adds up and adds up throughout the 180 days of the year. Now, this senior year, I thought me and Todd, we were pretty good. We haven't gotten that much trouble. And all of a sudden, the last 20 that we had today, it was 32 days left of the senior year. Right before pep rallies and everything starts, they're going to decide to kick him out of his senior class when he's been there for over 2,000 days, school days, since kindergarten. And the last 26 days, they're going to say, look, you're too much for us. You're gone. Right when it's graduation and everything. That just doesn't make sense to me. That just doesn't, it's unreal, it's crazy. I don't understand it. And then you say how you guys want to save money and everything like that, but then you guys aren't saving money if you're sending students to other schools.
Yeah, they are.
You
They're not
gotta
allowed to
pay,
pay
you
for
gotta
you.
pay. They gotta pay that school to keep them there. So they're really, in the long run, they're paying money to kick you out when you only had 26 days left. You know, it really doesn't make sense.
And then you're going to bus them
So I
there too.
appreciate your
Dr.
time.
Martin's going to look into it,
I
okay?
appreciate that. Thank you for.
Did you play center on the ball team?
Huh?
Did you play center on the football team?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I played rugby and I played for
Okay.
Ben House. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Steve Kuzner. I've been an Exeter resident for about 17 years. It sounds like there's a lot of pros and cons as to whether we need this garage or we don't need this garage. And of course there's a lot of expense involved with it. And I just wanted to present a couple ideas that maybe you thought of, maybe you didn't think of, might help reduce the cost or maybe offset the cost a little bit. You know, one of them was, you know, does the possibility exist of maybe just building something a little bit smaller and using 2 garages and fixing up the one that we currently have? That might be one opportunity. Another opportunity or another idea that I had was thinking about, I know over in Ole at the Berks Career and Technology Center, those kids, they build houses and we sell them to the public. Why couldn't we enlist them to do the building and the electrical and the plumbing? And that would save a lot of money on labor because we don't have to pay them, we just only have to buy the materials. So that's something else to think about. And one last thing, I found this online today. I know, the internet, right? But if you go to the Mason City Globe Gazette, which is in Forest City, Iowa, March 29th of this year, they just approved a new bus building, which is very similar to the same things that we're talking about. They own the property where they want to build it, and they also have an old building that's just not working. Now, they're getting a 90 by 120 with 8 stalls, fits 18 buses, wash bay, a repair shop, and it's built on their own property. And their total bid on that was $1.1 million completed. Now, I understand that that's Iowa, and this is Pennsylvania, but I can't imagine that it's 3 times more here than it is out there. Just some things to think about.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Doug Lafasi. I live on Pineland Road here in the district. And I do understand there's a need for transportation, there's a need to maintain buses that are safe and functional, dependable, and so on. My huge concern is the cost of this building. I went to a local contractor who, and I asked him about this, and he said, oh yes, I bid a bus barn for a commercial bus, school bus service here in the area, and he gave me a copy of the bid. This bid is 2 years old. The building, turnkey, is $369,000, and I have that bid with me. Now, I understand there are a lot of regulations that school boards and public entities have to go through that are not applicable to private business. And you've got regs and laws and all kinds of things going on. But it would seem to me that to get to the point of $750 million, I'm doubling up what he did. But in looking at your budget, I see site costs of $2 million. It's going to cost $2 million to bulldoze and pave that place? I mean, I'm in the wrong business. I mean, this is, I'll be over with my John Deere. I mean, truly, this is frightful. $2 million just to grade and pave the lots. That's what it's saying. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's fueling station there as well. Fueling station.
Takes my breath away. I would suggest maybe reciting, looking at other ways to utilize the land, different projection on the land. How can you reduce that? It just comes to me as a taxpayer a necessary thing, but way too high in cost.
I'll tell you stories, Mr. LaFasi. Like I say, I've been working on this for 10 years. 2 years ago, there was initially a number, $2.5 million, that was thrown around as the cost of the building. 2 years ago, I got a design build offer for $2.5 million to do everything on this list, plus some. But according to the law, the regulations of the state of Pennsylvania, I can't go to that contractor who offered to build this for me for $2.5 million on the same site and say, okay, do it. So I called the legislature, and I called up to Harrisburg. I said, why can't I do this? It's going to save me $1 million at least. The reason I couldn't do this, I could have done this if I'd done it prior to 2010. But in 2010, the authorization for school districts in the state of Pennsylvania to enter into design-build projects expired. Since then, every year, the bill has come up for reauthorization, and it fails. I tell the architect it's because of that strong architect's lobby. But the fact is, under the law, we have to build plumbing out separately. We have to build the construction, we have to build bid plumbing and electrical, right? We have to bid those three separately, in addition to the ground, the site prep. So, yes, sir. I could go out and get it built for $2.5 million with all the site prep and everything else, just like your friend built it for, you know, $370 a few years ago. But I can't because the law prohibits it. And also, we have to pay prevailing wage, which is union wage scale. So I don't know what your man was doing so far as that.
He's not a union contractor.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. I don't question it all.
It was 6,000 square foot constructed building.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
So what are they gonna do if you don't go by their ways? What's the worst they could?
Take away the state money that they give us. Throw me in jail. I'm too old to go to jail. And seriously, we have to abide by the law.
They break the law every day.
You can't challenge the state.
Oh, I challenge them.
You can, we do it all the time. It doesn't help though.
It's sort of like Don Quixote in the windmill.
As I said, my suggestion, I would ask you to look at reciting, look at ways to reduce the cost, site prep, $2 million. That's unbelievable.
On the site prep, I make a note, that's not just grading, that's also all your paving, it's all your stone, it's all your concrete coming in. I mean, it's your driveway entrance coming in. So I mean, it's not just pushing dirt, I mean, it's also all that groundwork that's going into it.
I understand. But it's probably the biggest place you can reduce the cost of this building. Because if you don't have to move as much dirt.
We did recite it. Well, I gave you the list here where we've looked, and for various reasons it didn't work out. We actually were going to build it on the other end of the Oahu campus. And we found out there was going to be another $1 million on top of this because of all the rock that's down there. So.
When I said reciting, I was not referring to finding a new location. I was saying reposition it within that plot of land.
That's what we did.
We knocked $1.235 million off by reciting.
Yeah. Right.
It was by going on the east side of the property due to the severity of the hillside, the cutting and the retaining walls. By moving it to where we are, a relatively level spot, and reduced by $1,235,000.
However, the reciting was raised as a concern by the Planning Commission as it relates to roadways getting into and out of Oahu. So that still potentially could be an issue as we go through the exception process. One of the Planning Commission board members expressed a concern about, traffic on that property. If it should have to be recited to the other side, as Mr. Brady said, that cost will go up by about $1.2 million.
But putting in the location we have now chosen, we're able to use the existing stormwater retention and detention systems that were put there under the Water Creek construction project. So we don't need to now build basins, which we would be required to do if we put it on the east side. We'd have to expand the basins. So kind of, it's like if you do this, you go there.
Well, it may come down to the best plan might be to have a dispersed system of placing your buses on the school grounds so they don't deadhead. And so all your travel in a bus would then be reversible. Smaller sites, maybe could work in some of the existing building sites.
Thank you, sir.
What you did, we haven't seen you for months. Haven't been on, walked over.
Just people in Only Tribe. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I don't want to take a lot of time. I wanted to say something about the walking and saving energy and all that. And I appreciate what you said. And as far as making schools more walkable, I just want to make a comment about that. We have tried that. Various groups have tried that. The thing about the rain didn't work. Probably number one reason it didn't work, well, the township didn't really want to do it either, but the residents in that area weren't really interested either, because they were afraid they would lose the bus service, and they wanted the kids to be able to ride a bus. Well, anyway, but that wasn't what I came to talk about. One thing that people have talked about in these meetings a few times is the fact that it seems like, where did all this come from? And this is sudden, and what was the big deal that we had to change, you know, the bus barn, and the public wasn't notified, and then you heard the money, $3.4 million, and then everybody heard it. But they really did talk about it over and over again. They had a lot of meetings where they talked about it. But what I found at those meetings, like the last facilities committee meeting that we had at Watton Creek when we all walked around the building, it seemed like a lot of people had, just like tonight, people have ideas and they have suggestions, and it's not just, oh, no, 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 you know, people are against it, some are for it. But this has actually been the best meeting, I think, so far that you've had, because I feel like you're listening to the people. A lot of times when these meetings happen, I get the feeling that, yes, you allow the audience to express how they feel, but your minds are already made up. And I have to go back to there was another facilities committee meeting where I remember you had slides and you had like different you know, you could have done it at, what happens if we fix Kerr Road? Or what happens if we put it at Lausch? Or what happens if we put it at Watton Creek? And the pros and cons of each one. And it seemed like every time somebody came up with a con, and it was me, so I can't say everybody, but I came up with a con for Watton Creek as the cost. And then they went across the line and said, well, if we fix Kerr Road, it's going to cost this, this, and this. And if we do it at Lausch, it's going to cost this. It's like, I just felt like, even though it was a discussion and you had different options on the table, the only option that you were really considering was Watton Creek. And it's just disturbing, you know, you feel like you just don't have any say in anything. I'm concerned about zoning. And I know that you have to do something special, either you have a zoning hearing board thing, having to do, and I don't even know what that's all about, so I shouldn't even talk about it, but you're going to call this bus barn an accessory to a school, because it's zoned for schools, but it's not zoned for a bus barn. But if you make it an accessory, then it will fly. So it's kind of like a sneaky way of getting it in there with the zoning. And I'm concerned about zoning because that happens every time somebody wants to not put a pavement in a new place that they're building, and they come along and say, well, there's no point in putting a pavement there because there's not a pavement next door, it doesn't go anywhere, so therefore there's never a pavement, you know. They always get an exception. And I'm concerned that you guys are going to get an exception. I don't even know what for, but you're going to go there.
Okay, I'll tell you what's going on there.
Okay.
The school district has no right to build anything anywhere in this township except by special exception. and we can build in the industrial district, general industrial district. But if we want to build a school, and
So you're saying
We need-
when you built a Watton Creek,
When
you
we-
had to get a special exception?
that's exactly right.
Okay, all right, all
And
right.
then the special exception under the rural areas, which that is, specifically lists as an accessory garages and maintenance facilities. So this is not dreamed up out of the blue, it's right out of the zoning regs.
It just seems to me that a school, a barn and maintenance and gas and dirty water and whatever is going to be different, a different impact on the environment than a school building would be. But, I don't want to argue about it, I was concerned about that. I am concerned about the ecological issues. I can't read my own writing here. Oh, you guys have received all kinds of awards for Watton Creek being a green school and saving energy, and you got solar panels, and it was a well-designed school, and I really do appreciate that. And it just seems like putting a bus barn there kind of ruins the nature concept that was originally proposed for that area. For instance, there's a pond in the back, and they were going to use that pond for the kids to go out and walk around the pond and pick up little salamanders and whatever, and it's a nature study. Then I heard a rumor, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that the walkway that goes around the pond will somehow not be there anymore if you put the bus barn in. That's not true.
Not true.
Okay. So you'll still be able to use the pond for the
Yes.
kids to learn things. Okay, that's good to know. And finally, just a simple thing. Every time there's an article in the newspaper, it says about this new bus barn being $3.4 million. $3.4 million everywhere. You see that figure. And yet at meetings, it's come up over and over that it's more like $3.6 million. And like every other building project, I know it's going to go over that because they always do. And you're going to say, no, they don't always go over. The Watton Creek building didn't go over. That was actually under budget, but now you're in litigation about the land stuff, and you're expecting to get money back, but you can't count on money until you get it.
Even with that questionable thing, it was still under budget.
Okay.
So the success of the lawsuit for that contractor not doing according to the specs has nothing to do with the Watton being under cost. It came in under bid.
Okay. It also just as likely could come in overbid.
No,
Anyway,
not if we have someone watching it. That's the way you come in under bid, by proper supervision, Linda.
okay. I will apologize deeply when it comes out to less than
I'll remember that.
$500. I will. And the final thing I just want to say, and I don't mean to be critical or nasty, and I really don't, but you guys have a program in Exeter Township School District about anti-bullying. I don't know how to say that word, always. Anti-bullying program. And that's a real good thing. And I think everybody should learn how not to be a bully or how to deal with bullies if you're the victim or a bystander. Mr. Quinter, I feel like you often bully people. If someone, at the last meeting, someone said, we were talking and you said, no, listen to me, and the guy said no, and you stood up out of your chair in a fighting position. You got really intimidating, and I know that you know when you're being intimidating, and you use that, and it's okay, I guess. But, and tonight it happened twice that I'm aware of, probably actually more than that. But you're in a position of authority, and you're in a position where people look up to you and respect you, and you kind of set you're a role model for the school. And so if you're teaching kids not to be bullies, I just think it'd be a good idea if you check out that course or something, or try one. remember it when you get up. Remember that you do come first.
I'll talk to my priest Sunday.
I would just like to thank Linda for her comments and for her attendance at very many of the school board events and activities. I know that it's hard for people to stay involved because you're busy. There is no question that this project has been talked about numerous times, well before I got on the board, but even in the time that I've been on the board with Dr. Tamura, we've had, at least from my accounting, 12 different meeting items on our agendas, whether they were workshops or voting meetings or Jim's facilities committee meetings. So I can honestly tell you that any of this discussion that we're having tonight, we have had numerous times over the last 2 years. So there's a reason for a sunshine law. Anything that we do, anything that we say is published in minutes, which are accessible to you guys. And Linda, I just appreciate the fact that you do come to the meetings. You are insightful. I agree with what you said about Bob. Bob can take it. He used to fly helicopters. He's a jarhead, which I appreciate. But thank you very much, Linda.
Good evening, Exeter Board. How are you tonight? Just want to start off by saying I do appreciate the time you guys put in. I know it's an unpaid volunteer position, but that being said, I am going to take out my pitchfork and torch and start with my first question here. Mrs. Guydish, I want to thank you. I know I've been bugging you off and on for updated budgets.
Are you Jason Mills?
Yes, I am. Sorry, did I actually send it? Jason Mill, 41 Pathfinder Drive. Sorry, I missed that. Mrs. Guydish, you had mentioned back at the April 10th meeting, and I'm kind of coming at this more in a fiscal arena. You know, I'm not looking at it as the bus center or anything like that. I'm looking at more dollars. And you had said because of the fiscal issues that the school is facing, and it looks like the deficits are going to continue and things are going to look worse going into 2020. You had mentioned specifically something about cutting wages and benefits for existing employees of the district. Is that correct?
I don't know that I said about cutting wages. I may have, I probably indicated that we need to look at some of the benefits, and as a county, we're in a consortium for our health coverage, looking at ways to control that cost. There are some benefits in our contracts which probably need to be evaluated and maybe tempered in some ways. Exeter employees really do have very good benefits, and if we are going to have to make room in our budget, if there is no pension relief, and there may be pension relief, we all hope there is some kind of pension relief. And that was my point, because that line item is growing at a rapid rate. You know, the employer contribution rate for next year is 25.84%. So 25% of gross wages the employer has to contribute towards PSERS. Of course, the state reimburses us at least half of that, but still it's a growing number, and it's going up to 30%. So my point in these projections, you know, out 5 years, is that this is what we're faced with in the current situation. And this is what it may look like. We may have to make room for these things by adjusting other line items in the budget. We don't know what, okay.
I was just going to say, could teacher furloughs possibly be those adjustments?
Yeah, as Dr. Martin had mentioned earlier, that when teachers retire, or when any support staff retires, or when administrators retire, we look at very closely, can we move people around and not impact the program at all? And we've done that very successfully over the past years, at least 30 teaching positions, a couple administrators, several support staff. So that's really the goal, to really, through attrition, you know, have some savings there.
And as I was looking through just some of the financial reports, I looked at a financial report from maybe about a year ago, And one thing that came to my attention was some type of swap deal where there was a number of millions that had been lost. Is that true through the district?
Yeah, at this point, I don't have all that information in my head right now to speak about it. We got out of the swaption, that was the remaining piece of that, through a refinancing of some issues. It was all rolled into that. These swaps started many years ago. There was basis swaps, and there was money that was earned on those. We actually used some of those funds to help pay part of the senior high construction project when there were some issues with it. But
do we know what dollar amount that was lost from the swap deal?
you know, if you would like that information, I'd be very happy to send it to you.
Thank you.
To summarize it.
The other thing I noticed also in the budget, there was 1.6 million that was included in the capital.
Sir, I think it was over 6 million.
Over 6 million lost?
Yes.
For the swap deal?
Yes.
So that would have paid for this project and then some? Okay.
And that swap was,
You're referring to a termination fee that had to be paid, but there, like I said, it was part of a refinancing. And
the auditor did say that we lost 6 million.
That's just gone.
And
6 million.
The information is in the audit report for the 12-13 school year. It's on the website in the management discussion and analysis. You'll find it on the first couple pages and explains the whole scenario. You can start there.
Thank you. It also on the current capital project source of funds, there lists 1.6 million as funds returned from Awadden, and I'm assuming that's the litigation that we're referring to that's coming in. I guess I'm having trouble understanding why that would be a source of funds, because it has question marks as the date, and is that a set amount, that 1.6 million?
If it goes in our favor, and we hope that it'll be a favorable outcome, we believe it will be, because I think we're in the right, that portion, or a good portion of it, will come back to the district. In the board's discussion, how are we going to fund this? The 2.5 million was new money issued in January of 2014 for different capital projects or for a transportation center. Now, what is the next source? What's the next logical source? Well, we have those remaining funds, and we expect that will come back to the district. So that's the next source to obtain from. Now, there's no guarantee when we'll get it, but that's the board's thinking through this process. If we move ahead with this project and we're at a point where your cash flow, there are other capital project funds that we can pull from. But this is just telling you that there's 1.7 million available from a prior project that should be coming back to the district. It makes perfect sense to use it towards another capital project. And in fact, that's what you have to use it towards.
But there's no guarantee it's going to come back in that budget year? In the 2015-16 budget year?
At this point, we're waiting to get in front of the judge, and that may happen late summer, early fall.
Okay. Thank you. Just one more question, since we're on the topic of litigation. The Awadden litigation, from what I understand, was something that transpired because of a lack of oversight that happened, and that was a $20+ million project. I guess, I don't know if this would be to you, Mr. Brady, but what's the guarantee, since this is only going to be a $3 or $4 million project, is this going to be any better oversight for a smaller project than we had at the existing Awadden site?
I can't predict the world. Because when you have a general contractor on a project and they have subs that come underneath them, they're relying on the fact that that business will be a reputable company, will perform the services that they're put under contract for. The situation that we ran into on the site work was apparently a company may have overexposed themselves to too much work at too low of a price. And at that time, they put themselves into a position where they no longer could stay in business. That particular organization, I did start to see their signs go up very quickly, and then they came down very quickly. So, you know, I mean, we are limited to using anybody that is a certified business that's approved in Pennsylvania to go after projects, at these type of projects, and insured. So we really don't have a choice of saying, you know, I know John down the street, I want him to use for my work. We have to use the low bid. And when you work in a low bid environment, sometimes it's a very good situation. Majority of times it is. You know, I do a lot of work with PennDOT projects. I could say the majority of times I'm on site and I see a contractor coming on, I feel very comfortable with the organization I see out there. It's just sometimes it doesn't work out.
So you don't see any additional management fees coming into this project to prevent?
Which will be standard.
Okay.
One thing, to expand on the litigation, it's not against the company that did it, it's against their insurance or bonding company that guaranteed that we would be getting the job to those specs. So it's not against the company. Additionally, we have taken on, with responsibility for this project, a local firm who, the head up of the project, lives in Exeter Township and has a vested interest and has expressed the fact that he will be exercising almost daily oversight on everything that happens out there.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Tom Flood. I'm a bus driver for about 8 years. I want to commend this board here for the job that they've done. All they've been getting up here all night is complaints about this, that, and the other thing. I think they do a fabulous job, and I certainly appreciate all your effort. We need a bus garage. We have to spend money. If you want a good school district, you got to spend money. That's the bottom line. There's no getting around it. People whine about their taxes. I pay a lot more taxes than this guy. I don't have any kids in the school district. I don't care. I want a good school district. You have to spend money to do it, let's do it, and let's stop whining about everything.
We like to minimize it though, Mr. Flood.
Hi, my name is Judy Joffred, and I just had a concern with the diesel and the kids close. I don't know if that would harm them in any way, or how close the buses would be with the children there.
We've been using diesels and I believe we're phasing them out, are we not? Is Mr. Wakeman here? Aren't we getting rid of the diesels?
No.
No, we're expanding them?
We got bus drivers driving for 30 years with diesel. They got no health problems.
Oh, no.
The kids are right there. They don't
Okay, I see what you're asking. The site of these tanks are at the far end of the campus. Now, distance means nothing, except when you install tanks, you have to do those installations to very specific criteria, which the government has said protects those people around them. So it protects the people and the environment. We just went through, or we finished up a 10 or 15 year monitoring plan out at the current site where the tanks from the previous owner got into the water table out there, and we had to go through that mitigation. So at the new site, we will install them as appropriate to protect the environment and the kids.
Okay, and then the second, it's a cluster now to go get your kid in a car at 01. I mean, the line goes all the way around, and so what's it gonna be like with the buses there?
Separate driveways.
Separate driveways?
It's separate driveways right now. Now, one, no more buses will be coming to Awatin School than come there now. Even if the township insists that we route those buses up through the Awatin thing, they're going out on their regular pickups and deliveries.
At the same time that the parents.
They leave in the morning. They leave before you get there, because they've got to get to the end of their run to pick up the kids to bring them back in time. Now, there's a seat on those buses for that child whose parent brings them to school. And I've been fighting with my wife for 30 years about hauling my kids to school.
When you have a divorce, and the bus will only go to mom's house and won't come to dad's house, that's why you have a parent driving the kid to school.
Not the majority of them, ma'am. I admit that will happen. I admit that will happen, but...
He has his son, and he has his son the majority of the time. The bus will only go to mom's house, not dad's house.
Was dad's house in the township?
Oh, certainly.
Well, why don't we have it designated as a pickup?
Because his ex got her mouth in there first. That's why.
If she's there the majority of the time,
That's the way it is, you know? So we deal with it, we take him, and we pick him up. So I know what a cluster it is with the cars. That's horrible. But anyway, next on the agenda is, I went to Wyomissing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. My sister still lives in the township. I pay double the taxes she pays on my property. And I have a big house, she has a big house. And the other thing is, don't you see a lot of houses going up for sale, you're a builder, in Exeter? What do you think when you raise the taxes? You're gonna see businesses leave, more people leave. They're not gonna be able to afford our.
Ma'am, who said anything about raising taxes?
Oh, baloney, when you build that?
No, baloney, no, let's lay the baloney aside.
Have to go up.
Why?
Because you're spending
Why?
close to 3.4 plus.
She just identified in here a total of almost $4 million to pay for this. There's no discussion of taxes here.
Okay, so you're gonna say taxes won't go up?
I'm not going to say that because taxes will not depend on this.
Put it in writing. Take note. You got that on camera? Right. My kids are done with Exeter, and believe me, my last child going through Exeter was no party. They lost him on the bus. Never found him to after 6:30. Never got math for 2 years in the junior high. When Dr. Smith and I went to the school board, they couldn't give me 5 minutes. They were worried about the job Johnny's on site, and that is no lie. So for 2 years, my kid didn't get math. So it was no party for me bringing my kid through Exeter. My older ones were fine, but not the last one.
Thank you, ma'am.
No tax raise.
Yesterday because I think the acting department.
Just a minute, sir. Ma'am, could you be quiet, please?
Bully.
Yeah, bully. I'd like to hear the young man that's talking to us. Go ahead, ma'am.
I think I found an actual security threat in the school network because they're actually performing a man-in-the-middle attack and faking the sets, or at least I'm pretty sure they're faking the sets because the sets don't always match and they are turning off important features that are important for student and staff security of our personal information. And I feel like this is a big threat to students, or at least I view it as a threat because they're blocking logins for personal Google Drive because school Google Drive is locked down. It's practically useless for most purposes if you want something that actually works and doesn't have issues all the time.
Have you talked with Mr. Kane or Mr. McFarland about this?
I just discovered it today, but it really disturbs me that the SSL certs are being messed with. and a lot of ways to do it, and I wouldn't put it past them to do it here at Exeter.
Okay, would you go in and talk to Mr. McFarland for me more?
Okay, yeah.
And then he'll probably call the commuter section in, but we appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just something that I suspect. I'm not totally sure.
Oh, we'll look it out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hello. I am Peggy Kirschner. I'm a resident on East 37th Street. I'm not going to whine. Actually, I'm going to start out by saying thank you to the administration, and not to change the tone here a little bit, but the recent tragedy and the death of Jamie Cotis, it was very obvious that the emotional well-being of everybody, at least in the high school I could speak to where my children are, the students and the faculty and the staff who were just devastated, but that their emotional well-being was the priority. And thank you very much. I was very impressed. I think that really helped that community, grieve and begin to heal. So as a parent, I can tell you that's very, very much appreciated. Certainly. And I guess a couple comments. And the one thing, the expression, time is money. Money is money, of course, and you're talking about spending a lot of money. And time, and I know you guys are volunteers, and I know you spent a lot of time, and I do appreciate that. Whether or not I always agree with what you're thinking or your decisions are, I do know it is a time-consuming job you have here. And I can't help but wonder, as I find myself back into a cycle of coming to meetings, and I am one who I will say not able to come throughout the year all the time. I've been involved over the years on several different issues. Crosstown Connector being one of them, the merger. I know a lot of time was spent on the community side, and I know for those of you who were on the board at those times, a ton of your time was spent. And you only have so many hours in a day, and I don't know all of you very well, but I assume you have other things you do in your life, whether it be a job or family. It's taking away your school board time, and school board time that you could be talking about and thinking about and researching issues that relate to education and to the kids. And if you have a thought and you have an idea, it just sometimes thinks that it seems that it sort of hits a point where it's just kind of stubbornness is driving it through. You've got the majority of folks from the community saying, hey, this isn't a good idea. You're facing a deficit in a proposed budget, and you're looking at spending millions and millions of dollars for something that there does seem to be some alternatives for. So I think that's just unfortunate. If you could look back and calculate those hours and say not only, the time in your life it took, but what did it take away from of your school board hours of a week? So that's just my one comment. And then my other question has to do, I guess, with sort of board process. And I will ask Mr. Dysinger, if I may. Earlier this year at a meeting, I know you had expressed concern about action that Mr. Quinter took regarding the disbanding of the technology committee without following proper board protocol. And last year, it was mentioned at a township meeting that Mr. Quinter had offered the bus property for free. And that did not have prior board approval, if I'm correct. And I'm just sort of wondering, as you undertake these huge projects and think, spending millions and millions of dollars, how does that kind of thing happen, and how does that affect how you move forward with these projects?
I'm sorry, which kind of thing?
Where you have a board member who's doing something that the rest of the board isn't aware of.
Well, let me just comment on that real quick. What I did was, and I give Mr. Quinter credit, I brought it to the attention that, one, I felt that technology was very important to the district and we needed a committee, and two, that there were board policies that also said that. And we fixed it. we reinstated it. So I think that as long as there's that kind of dialogue on this board, and as long as we sort of self-check one another, I think we're in pretty good shape.
And how does the offering of the property to the township fit into the scenario of the bus barn?
That was a discussion with the transportation or the roads manager, and it was a discussion on consolidation of the refueling capability for the school district and the township. And if the township was going to use our refueling facility, then they were going to have to give some money. It was a total discussion about cooperation between the township and the district. One person cannot commit anything, and the road master knew that. That was just a discussion on possible alternatives to both of us building a fuel facility.
Okay, and one other just quick thing. You did mention that there were other sites that you had thought about or looked at or researched. Do you feel that, and this could be to anybody, there was due diligence done for each of those sites? And I did sort of look at the reimbursement, and it's a big lengthy document, but you explain that, kind of summarize that nicely. But the site apparently at Owatton it's requiring several $1 million, so it's not an easy site to build something on. Has there been sort of a cost analysis of if you found a site that wouldn't require as much prep, and then how specifically that would affect the reimbursement, and if it's going to save a huge ton of money, maybe it doesn't matter if the reimbursement isn't as great?
I mentioned 13 different sites that we had looked at and considered. And in each case, the first thing we considered was cost of the site. Then, how was it going to impact our reimbursement? To get the maximum reimbursement, you have to be at the ethnographic center of the township. And the current bus barn and the Owatton site are as close to that ethnographic center as we can afford. The reason we went to the state about the silt basin is that it would be at very minimal cost. Unfortunately, it's at the very end of the ethnographic distribution of the students. So even though the site was free, the net result was spending more money. So that's what we do when we look at these things.
Mrs. Kirshner, I know that, and I've asked myself, I've been out to the PDE website, they will supply you with that formula. It's quite extensive. It's not something that I could figure out on my own. I would dare say that no matter how smart you are here in the public, it would be a challenge for you to figure out as well. But that information is available from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. The formula does change from year to year. You can pull it for every school district in the state of Pennsylvania. You can, the information that I was sent only went up to the 2011-2012 school year. I know that Mrs. Guidish has more current information, which she has shared with me. So the information is out there. It is it's challenging to understand, but I understand what you're getting at, which is if you looked at a facility, did we run that formula through that?
If you save $1.5 million on the
well, it wouldn't be
location
$1.5 million
or
because
whatever.
I think that our reimbursement from the state is, let's say, 800 to 900,000.
970,000.
But I mean, on the location, if you'd save, if it's free or you'd save money and your reimbursement is going to be less, but how much less and how many years would it take to?
Can I just make a comment about the reimbursement? It is very complicated. There is some reimbursement for miles driven without students, but if you are placing a facility that is on the outskirts of our geographic area, or, well, let's just say that, you are increasing labor hours, number one. Right now, our routes are rated, okay? But if you're asking the driver to be in the vehicle so much longer, driving to and from, you're gonna, probably incur some additional labor time, in addition to fuel, wear and tear. Now, as I said, there is some reimbursement for miles without students, but it's only up to the miles driven with students. So overall, the net cost to the district would go up just because there would be additional labor, mileage, et cetera. And what you're given by the state is a rate that hasn't changed for years. The only thing that does change is the factor that's used in determining your reimbursement. And that's increased by the CPI, which the most recent increase was 1.5%, and that rate is lower than, say, what other costs are increasing.
In addition, our bus drivers are part-time. If we increase their hours, potentially they would be eligible for medical insurance according to whatever they call Obamacare. So that is also a consideration. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm back. I have a question for you, Mrs. Kushner, because you've been quiet. The bus study that was done in 2012 never raised an issue about how the facility affected its performance. But the study did recommend the need for cameras in the bus to improve student safety. Those cameras have never been installed. So my question for you is, why are we building something that was never called for and ignoring something that was recommended?
In short,
I don't have an answer for you.
that's it.
I can answer that.
But, yes.
It was put in the budget. We were going to phase it in over years, or a few years, the cameras. In the 13-14 budget, we had funds. Our tractor loader went. That was a priority. We used the funds for that. This year, we invested in the snow scraper, which is portable, by the way. And if we were ever to relocate, we will take the snow scraper with us. So we did transfer funds to try and get something in by the end of this year, if at all possible, and then going forward, phase it in, because it's very costly.
Thank you. I just was wondering, again, like why we're doing something that wasn't called for and then have delayed something that was recommended. Second question, Dr. Bender, you've been quiet too. With 3 union contracts expiring the end of next year, how flexible do you think the unions are going to be, knowing that we're using our dwindling funds to be used for a project that is not necessarily required?
I think the unions, our workers and employees appreciate the facilities that we need to provide both for them and for the children to be a successful and efficient school district.
Thank you. I just was wondering, you don't think that bargaining is going to be a little bit more difficult with them seeing that spending?
Well, there are 2 different sources of funds. The compensation to our employees comes out of the general fund. You heard earlier how Mrs. Geidish explained that the funding for the bus facility is from a bond and from the recovered funds from Watton Creek. So those are really 2 separate sources of funding.
It's different funding, but to the taxpayer, it's all the same taxes that increase every year. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that if the unions want more, which they probably will, and rightfully so, the budget is predicting a deficit. Why are we going to spend $4 million for something that wasn't recommended? I'm going to sit down because I'll give a long answer. Thank you.
Next.
Jennifer Harvey.
Microphone. They want to hear you. We can all read.
Jennifer Harvey, Riverside, Pennsylvania.
Just talk right.
I'm usually the loud one in the room too.
Jennifer Harvey, 105 Pennsylvania. I've addressed the board several times, both in person and in emails. I appreciate those of you who have corresponded back. Some of you have not responded at all. I realize you're not under obligation to do so, but it is appreciated. One of the issues that I've noticed over the past year, following the merger, which I was trying to be very active with, following the little intricacies of what happens in the school district, I'm noticing a tendency for big projects to kind of skim under the radar and then pop up to the community like, oh wow, guess what, we're doing this. And I realize, and I work with Mike, I appreciate Mike, he's called us as a community on this, and he's dead on. Yes, they're being talked about, and these things are not, we can participate, we can attend all the meetings, we can come every month, and we can know about the things that are happening. But it seems like there's not a big effort when there's a really big ticket item to say, you know what, we have a problem. We don't have a solution necessarily for it. By the way, I think it might cost a lot of money. We need you as a community to come into us and give suggestions, offer some guidance, because by the way, it's a really big ticket item. This isn't about laptops, which was a $100,000 initiative, I believe, or somewhere around there. This is a $5 million item, because that's what they started at, right? And you guys brought it, you did bring it down. I think the board needs to start considering a new way of communicating with the community. Now, I'm going to say that those that are left in this room, we need to be at these meetings. We do, on a routine basis, not just now. So I'm taking 50% of the blame for the community and for myself, but I think you also need to be reaching out to us more. When you hit these big ticket items, instead of just going on like this is business as usual, because it's not. $5 million isn't business as usual. Laptop initiative of $100,000, that's business as usual. Teacher raises, teacher furlough, all these those are business as usual. When you hit mergers, when you hit big item expenses, it's no longer business as usual. And that's where I think you guys need to step up and say, we need a special community forum because we have a big ticket item on the table, so that we're talking and having this discussion before we get to the point where you're looking for zoning and you're having architects do bids. It's almost cart before the horse, is what I feel like. So, it's not going to fix this situation now, but it's just a suggestion for going forward that I think you'll get better community cooperation if you do it in reverse. Mr. Plinter, I threw a ton of questions to you via email, and I so appreciated your responses. I don't agree with you, but I appreciated the fact that we could have the dialogues, that we could have the time to talk, and you spent so much time, and I know you did because they were long emails. But I appreciated being able to have a better understanding of the issue and have that time. And I just think it would go a long way to building the community relationship with the parents, with the poor people out here who don't have kids that are paying these taxes. I got a 6-year-old, we got a long way to go, so, But I just think it would do a lot of good, all right? The only other question I have, because I'm still not completely sold on this, I realize we need to fix something here. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. It's very clear that the current facility is not what it needs to be. What the solution to that is, I don't know. But I'm continually surprised at the lack of looking at things thoroughly before we spend a lot of money. I really think $5 million, and I don't believe this is, I think we're at 3.64 for the estimate. I don't think it's going to be that. I'm surprised if it is. But I think that should be like your very, very last option. So why haven't we gone back to revisit a study that's now 3 years old about costing out services? Have we really exhausted all of the land and the other reuse places? I mean, have we really hit the bottom? And have we looked at the cost of what this is going to be now, building something new? Any additional back and forth and gas costs and rerouting. Has anybody done the rerouting for this new facility to really see what it's going to be, or we're kind of guessing? It should be close because it's, you know, a closed facility, so it's going to be a ballpark. Or are we going to have to reroute, you know, busing routes? Have we really looked at how those numbers now play out? I'm going to direct that one to you, which you're always so nice.
Yes.
We've looked at costing out services
Yes.
again, contracting them out.
Every site that I mentioned has been looked at with the idea of how much is it going to cost us and what will be the operating impact on it.
Okay, when I say,
Mr. Wegman told me it was all right. Mr. Wegman knows everything about busing.
if we looked at having a contracted service, us, Exeter not running the buses, having another agency do it, have we looked at that again? No.
We just looked at that 2 years ago, and I tried to slip it in. I'm on the board of the BCIU. The BCIU provides more bus transportation for school children in this county than anyone else. So I know how their operation is, and I know they'd make money off of us, and it would be more expensive than what we pay now.
Is it still more expensive though when you tack on the new build? And how much
Yes,
that would cost?
yes, because that's forever. And the trait with the IU, I come in 3 years at this, and all the time I'm having negotiations with my personnel. My medical costs are going up, so as soon as that contract expires, I have to make my margin again, so I move the price up. That's the way business works. And I'm not condemning the IU for that, because it's the way every business works. So,
Mrs. Harvey, I think I addressed this issue with you in an email concerning privatization. The thing that people don't understand is that privatization, in the long run, costs the district a lot more. And our board, the only thing we do is pay the bill, and it keeps on paying. If you go to some of the districts that have privatized, they only wish they could have their bus services back.
Yep.
And if you also look, when you have a private bus company, you know, they can get stopped on the road, and the police can stop them. And they have found that many of those people, the brakes are not right, or maybe they even threw the bus driver off because he wasn't even certified to ride a bus. All our employees, are thoroughly, vetted. They all work for us. If anything happens, they're responsible to us. But if we have contracted services, they're not responsible to us anymore, and we have no say in the hiring and firing of who they have. So all we do is pay the money, and as far as I'm concerned, I will never privatize bus services, because it's much cheaper. It sounds good, oh, we can do it cheaper, but over the long run, we saw that in the contracts, over the long run, they keep on putting the services up, and once you go away with your bus services, you can't get them back because it would be too costly. So that idea of privatization is not the right thing. Our public servants work for us, and if anything's wrong, it's so efficient. I think Mr. Quinter said 25%, but as I remember the issue, we're at the top 10% in Pennsylvania for efficiency. And every time the state police come in to inspect our buses, they are number one. So that's what we want for our children, that those are safe buses and those children are coming on a safe bus.
before there's any untoward accusations against the IU hires people with all their clearances, and the quality of the drivers is certainly no more suspect than our own, but they aren't our people, that's all.
I just have one more question. Is there any circumstance in this project that would cause the board to turn around and not go forward?
If it got too expensive,
What would that number be?
I don't know. That would be up to 9 people to decide.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erica Gustis. I live on 5130 Old Turnpike Road. Sorry about that. A point that is brought up continually, and I'm sure that all members of the board feel it, is some of the labor is the cost of the project. What I'm hearing more, and what I have more myself, I think I can speak for most of the people, whether they're driving the buses or not, is wanting to know where the money's coming from, having a better understanding of that. There are a lot of people, myself included, that are concerned about the cost of the project or projects that are put on hold because of this project, circulating back into a higher tax rate. Many people are on fixed incomes. People like myself, my household is on one income. And taxes are almost double what we used to pay before my husband and I moved our family down here. And if that money is not coming from the taxpayers, they need to know where it's coming from. If that information is available, then that is source information that needs to be made available to the public. If the public chooses not to spend the time to read it, then that is their own problem. But it should be made available clearly to everyone, either on the website for the school district, or if you have to send out an email through the school system, and God knows I get enough of those, for every early dismissal and every other possible announcement. There is a way to get the information to everyone. And it is on us, the members of the community, whether we have children in the district or not, to read that information. To come with objective questions, not to accuse anyone of dereliction of duty, be it a bus driver or a board member. But we have a right to know where the money's coming from. Because what we don't want is a surprise that totals millions of dollars. What we don't want is our children who cannot attend schools because the money for the teachers' raises is not there. Money for the bus drivers who, even though they are considered part-time, care enough about our children to get them to and from safely. Bottom line is, whatever order the projects are done in, we need to know where those dollars come from. If they are from funds that are provided by the state, that's great. But we need to know when the funds become available, when the deadline to use those funds is, and what those funds are eligible to do. And if we do not have that information, then people have every right to come in here and address this board and say, what are you doing? You can't pop up and hand us a possible price tag of 3.64, whatever it is. I used to work for an architectural firm. I went to architectural engineering for my degree. I know darn well that projects like this rarely cost what they are budgeted. I've seen it happen. We've seen it happen with a lot more. The contract was awarded for $1.5 million to correct someone else's mistakes. The money's got to come from somewhere. And everyone sitting here has every right to know where those dollars come from. And if we don't read it, shame on us. But we still have the right to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Every school board meeting is videotaped. That video is on the Exeter Township School District website for you to view at your convenience. Additionally, there's a copy of every approved set of minutes to meetings on the website. Of course, the newspaper comes in and reports on big items. So, if anything, one of our newer board members exclaimed, how can it be so you guys don't have any secrets? We have public meetings. There is nothing decided except in those public meetings. I do not call my fellow board members and make deals that next year I'll give them a book purchase from some certain publishing company and extend. No, it doesn't go on. These people don't hear from me for 2 weeks at a time until the next meeting. So it is a totally transparent thing. The minutes are published, the agenda is published, and a film is put up, and the newspaper covers it. I don't know how we could be any more transparent. So.
While I agree with Bob, and I have said that everything is published out there and it is incumbent upon you as the community to research that information, I can tell you just in my little bit of experience on the board, there is a significant learning curve. And so perhaps, and Dr. Martin and Bob have talked about this, perhaps creating some sort of an issues brief on particular issues, big item issues, that might give some history for these projects. And I know that both Dr. Martin and Bob did one for the bus barn, and so I would encourage folks to look at that. I think that was a good effort on behalf of the administration and the board to try to help you understand the issues, and I would just encourage the board and the district. I know we post this stuff out there, but I can guarantee you that watching a video of a 3-hour school board meeting is no more fun the second time watching it than it is for us sitting through it. So if there are ways that we can find to communicate with you, we should certainly be doing that. And I know that my colleagues on the board, most of them are responsive to you and will try to share information. You know, sometimes it is a little repetitive for us to say things over and over again, but as we know in communications, it takes a repetition for something to sink in. So I appreciate what they did on the bus facility to this date, and I would hope that that would continue.
Hi, my name is Leonard Burton. I'm a resident at 221 Gibraltar Road. Kind of thought these sessions were supposed to be brainstorming sessions, how to advance our district educationally and culturalize our children and make a better place, and all I've heard is bus garage banter tonight. So certainly we should try to move this thing expeditiously through the process and get this thing wrapped up. With that being said, I disagree with doing a $3 million project. I don't understand if we threw $1 million at the existing facility, I'm sure it'd turn into a great Taj Mahal and, you know, be enough to get us through the current year, when we could throw money at other better opportunities. I have a question for Dr. Martin. Do you see yourself having to sacrifice school programs or cut extracurricular activities or sports based on the current spending associated with the garage? And I understand it comes from separate funds, but it still all rolls up to one tax dollar.
No, and I could never support it if I thought for a minute that that would happen. I'm an educator, and you know, I don't build things. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. You know, I'm not a finance expert. I have to know about those things because it's now part of my job, but I'm an educator. I care about the kids. I care about what they're learning. I care about the teachers because they're the ones in front of the kids every day, and they do a great job. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to do my very best to make sure that that continues and continues to improve, not just continues the way it is.
Do you see yourself having to sacrifice things in your current budget, though, because of other groups spending within the district?
Because of other...
Well, other divisions, like if we do the bus garage or facilities thing.
No, I don't. Like I said, you know, if I did believe that that was going to happen, I could never put my support behind this project, and I would recommend against it. You know, I don't think any of us like to spend that kind of money on this project, but you know, I've been around long enough and I've been visiting the bus garage long enough to know that it's a very poor facility for the job that we do there, and it's just a credit to the people that work there, as many others have said, that we've been able to continue the level of service we have. But at some point, you have to look at, you know, at what you got and what you need, and say at some point we've got to bite the bullet. Now, you know, so many people have said, why don't you just improve, you know, the facility that you have? And that would be great if it would really make it a better facility and better able to support the program that we have, but it really wouldn't. And I have to sadly come to the conclusion that I think that putting on a new roof and all of the other things that were suggested really is kind of like throwing good money after bad. I don't think that you want to invest in a facility that no longer meets your current needs.
What about alternatives aside from a brand new facility? I mean, have we really gone through that process well? I mean, it doesn't seem like we've gotten anywhere tonight.
You know, I know. I've been here 12 years, and that's just a drop in the bucket, but it's, sometimes it feels like a long time. And ever since, I first came here, we've talked about the bus garage and, what improvements could we make or where could we relocate it and so forth, always with an eye to spending the least amount of money. And, it was always like, okay, well, this probably isn't a good solution. We're just going to have to do with what we have and so forth. And you get to the point that, how long do you keep doing that? How long do you continue to do that? If there was another solution that I thought was a good solution, I would recommend that solution. But I haven't been able to come up with it. And, I haven't heard, I've heard a lot of great ideas here, but they're all ideas that we really have thought about. And, like I said, I'm not an expert in this area, so I've got to listen to the experts. And, I still hope that there's a way we could still get the cost down. We're going to, if we move forward with this and we get all the approvals, we're going to be bidding certain items separately to see, depending on how the bids come in, we might not be able to do those items to keep the cost down. For example, they talked about the number of bays. Well, I don't know how you can service 60 vehicles with one place to service them, because you're going to have more than one vehicle that needs to be serviced. But some people say, well, do you really need 3? Well, a bay is only $35,000. In the grand scheme of things, it's not going to save a whole lot of money because it's just the basic structure with a roof and walls. But there are things like that we're bidding out separately because of reserving the option. Okay, well, we're not going to do that. We'll save X number of dollars by not doing that. The wash bay, for example, and the equipment for that and everything. If the ticket comes in too expensive, those are things we may not do. And we still got a long way to go on this, but honestly, if I saw another way, I would be the first to recommend it, because I agree with that, with everybody saying it is a lot of money, and we do need a lot of things. But I don't feel like we are challenged financially as school districts, and that's not just Exeter. I think every school district faces challenges, and we've all been over what those challenges are, and most of them are not of our making or doing, and we can't change them. But in the end, our goal is to preserve and protect the children that are educated and continue to educate them at the same level or a higher level, and preserve and protect the people who are doing that work every day, our teachers and administrators and support staff that are in our schools. And I do not believe that building this facility is going to make me sacrifice a school program or furlough a teacher or anything like that, because I could never support that.
Thank you for your answer. What about further advancing the entire situation, instead of staying on a baseline with current teachers and current programs in schools, bail on doing the bus garage and dump it all onto improved education and programs and adding in new things that maybe students need?
Well, I think we are adding in new things as we can. I mean, somebody brought up the one-to-one program, and that's something that we're putting technology in the hands of students. We're helping them be 21st century learners. They walk around with devices in their hands all the time. They're very adept at using them. Let's have them use them in the classrooms where they can learn deeper and and have better learning experiences, because they have learning right at their fingertips. There's so much out there. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And when we need, even though it's tough and we sweat over it, when we need an extra staff member to do a certain job to help a group of students, we find a way to do that. And whether it's we cut something else that isn't as critical to the students. You know, it's always putting the students first and making sure that they have what they need. And sure, I mean, we have a new STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math, and a whole curriculum that's going in place in our high school and also going down into our junior high, and that's all new. And we're finding ways through alternate sources of funding, grants, and so forth, in getting the community involved and businesses involved and partnerships and so forth. Our education foundation is doing a lot. So we are still continuing to improve, and I really don't feel that, you know, there's something that we need that would just make everything just so much more terrific if we only had the money that we were going to put into the bus garage. I just don't feel that way. My assistant, Dr. Davies, is in charge of curriculum, and I don't want to speak for you, but, you know, yeah, tomorrow's our STEM night right here in this school. So there's going to be 20 stations where kids can come and see how things are made and try things themselves, and it's going to be awesome. Lots of teachers are volunteering their time to come, and it's really a great experience for the community and the parents and the students. So I hope a lot of people out there come. But we keep moving forward regardless of the challenges, and you know, we're not going to let the kids down, we're not going to let the community down, and we're going to use the tax dollars that we have, and you know, we all pay taxes too, and we know it's hard, and we know how expensive it is. We're going to use them wisely, we're going to use them for the benefit of the students. And part of that is getting the kids to and from school and making sure our employees, you know, have a decent place to work and a safe environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tori Schlegel and I live in Farming Ridge. I don't know if this was ever thought about. I see the giant shopping center over here vacant. Can anything be done with that? I know when St. Joe's Hospital decided to move out in Byrne Township, they sold St. Joe's for $10 to the Reading School District.
Gave it away for free.
Okay, $1 or something. You know, it would be a lovely location for the buses. The buses could easily exit the one end, they could exit the other end. Somehow that, maybe Giant, I mean, Giant pays rent to keep that building there empty, and it's not serving the community. Could that be revamped somehow for $1 million? Look at all that great parking there in the back, in the front. The lights, the buses can go in and out so easily.
Mr. Schlegel would be great, except 2 years ago,
And look at all the money they're getting tax-free because they built up the roads around here, correct? That shopping center doesn't pay taxes for a couple of years, couple more years.
we get taxes from them every year.
Something like that. Hey, this is your,
Okay, 2 years ago, a new mortgage was let on that shopping center for $11 to $12 million. So we would have to satisfy that mortgage first to get the property. Additionally, that shopping center pays something like $200,000 a year in property taxes. If we took that as a school facility, we would lose that $200,000. What I'm saying, right before we parked one parking line on there, we would have spent close to $12 million and lost $200,000 every year. It's not best use of that property.
if people can't afford to live in their houses, what are all those vacant houses going to do in time? Because it's just, the taxes go up, 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 up.
And I pay taxes on my house too. And I'm old. Is there anyone else?
I just thought of one last question now. If the project goes forward, what would become of the Kerr property? Would you put it up for sale or would it be retained?
It would be put up for sale. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sabra Reyes, and I'm Sabra Reyes. I live at 502 Exeter Road. I
I just wanted to ask you, at the planning commission meeting last week, I really got kind of lost with all the questions they had about how you have several exceptions that you have to put through in order to build on this location that you want to build. And one I want to ask you about, they especially mentioned a waiver, which had to be agreed upon by the Department of Conservation.
That was just a general warning. The major problem that was brought up at the Planning Commission, the Secretary, Mr. Shane, said that this use was not allowed in that zoning district. He later came to us and said he erred and it was allowed as a special exception. And we have to get a special exception because we have to get a special exception for anything we do in the whole township. But it was nothing special for us to apply for that.
Okay, so there is no big conservation issue that would be brought up that would make it
Our architect will see that there is not a conservation problem, won't she, Justin?
And the waiver was something brought up which is not that.
No.
All right, I do know that.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Otherwise, we're going home. I thank you very much for your attendance, your suggestion, and your questions. Have a good evening.